नमस्ते, आप सभी का बहुत-बहुत स्वागत है आज के इस बातें मुलाकातें कार्यक्रम में और आशा करता हूँ आप सभी को बड़ा अच्छा लग रहा है और एक बहुत ही यूनिक चीज़ें आपको सुनने को मिलेगा और हमारे साथ आज के स्पेशल मेहमान जिन्हें आप स्क्रीन पे देखेंगे, पूरे स्क्रीन पे, यान सर हमारे साथ हैं और बहुत ही अच्छा लग रहा है इनको यहाँ देखकर और काफ़ी बातें हम लोग जो है अपने इंडियन आर्मी के बारे में सुनेंगे और यान सर खुद अपनी कहानी भी हमारे साथ शेयर करने वाले हैं जो पहले तो बताना नहीं है लेकिन हम लोग उनसे सुनेंगे तो और अच्छा लगेगा आपको। और आपने पोस्टर देखा ही होगा और उसमें हमने मेंशन भी काफ़ी चीज़ें की हैं। तो आज एक यूनिक चीज़ें जिसके बारे में हम लोग हमेशा एक क्यूरियोसिटी रहती है, एक जिज्ञासा रहती है कि आर्मी में कैसा लाइफ़ होता होगा, कैसे काम करते होंगे, कैसे लड़ाई पे जाते होंगे। एक कॉमन व्यक्ति के लिए ये सारी चीज़ें थोड़ा-सा वैसे लगता है कि क्या होता होगा, है ना? तो जब हम लोग इंडियन आर्मी मैन से ये सारी चीज़ें सुनेंगे तो बहुत ही सुंदर तरीके से हमें पता चलेगा कि कैसे उनका लाइफ़ है। तो उनके टाइम पे उन्होंने कैसे लाइफ़ को जिया और क्या-क्या चीज़ें हुई, वो सारी चीज़ें हम लोग उनके द्वारा सुनेंगे। तो आप सभी की तरफ से यान सर का बहुत-बहुत स्वागत है उनके साथ और मैं चाहूँगा कि हमारे साथ विशेष एक म्यूज़िकल अ, सुंदर सा गीत के माध्यम से बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद, शुक्रिया। बहुत ही प्यारा-सा जो है आपने देशभक्ति गीत के साथ यान सर का स्वागत किया है, तो आपके लिए भी चंद तालियाँ बनता है। सारे जहाँ से अच्छा हिंदुस्तान हमारा इसी गीत के
थैंक यू
साथ।
रोहन।
यान सर जी, बहुत स्वागत है आपका, कैसे हैं आप?
थैंक यू। थैंक यू रोहन।
यान सर मैं चाहूँगा कि आप बहुत सारी चीज़ें आपने की है, तो मैं शुरू करना चाहूँगा आपसे कुछ सवाल, छोटे-छोटे सवाल और मैं चाहूँगा कि आपकी सबसे पहले जो लर्निंग इन द फैमिली एंड एट स्कूल इसके बारे में थोड़ी-सी बातें ज़रूर हमारे साथ शेयर कीजिए।
अच्छा, मेरा हिंदी ऊँचे दर्जे का हिंदी नहीं है, मैं इंग्लिश में
बिल्कुल,
बोलूँगा
बिल्कुल,
और
नो प्रॉब्लम।
हो सकता है मैं हिंदी में भी बात करूँ। तो मेरा माय बिलीफ है कि अ, वैल्यूज़ हमारे रीति-रिवाज़, चाल-चलन फैमिली में होना ज़रूरी है। Therefore, parents have to give the right values to their children because this is the foundation of their character. And subsequently, it is the school teacher who has to build upon that foundation. So, if India has to move forward, it is very important that every single individual has the right character qualities. And that can only happen if it starts at the home. Of course, teachers also have to build up on that. And after that, when the child becomes a young adult, then he or she has to build up on what they have learned at home and at school. So, this is what I feel about values which are taught at home are the most important values because they last forever. And these values shape attitude, behavior, and conduct. And each of us needs to be a good Indian citizen, first of all. You may be the best professional in the world, but if you are corrupt, then it's meaningless. So, good character is very important for India to move forward. And that starts from the home. Of
या
course,
बहुत
later on, I don't know whether I should talk about the values of the army at this stage or a little later.
हुँ।
Archana?
Whenever you want.
जी, जी। यान सर बहुत ही अच्छी बात आपने बताया, जहाँ पर हमने शिक्षा की बात कही, तो घर से ही बच्चों को जो है शिक्षित करना चाहिए, ये आपने बताया और मूल्यों से उनका जीवन जो है संपूर्ण होना चाहिए। अगर मूल्य नहीं है उनके जीवन में, तो कहीं न कहीं चीज़ें जो है गलत हो जाएगी और वो खुद के फैमिली के लिए और देश के लिए बड़ा मुश्किल कर देगा। तो इसीलिए ज़रूरी है कि बच्चों को हमें जो है मूल्यनिष्ठ जो गुण हैं वो बचपन से घर से ही उनको संस्कारित करना चाहिए ताकि वो आगे चल के उन चीज़ों को फ्रेम आउट कर सके और उन चीज़ों को समाज में दिखा सके। तो आइए यान सर सेकंड क्वेश्चन कोर वैल्यूज़ ऑफ द इंडियन आर्मी इसके बारे में आप बताइएगा?
Okay, thank you. You see, when from the moment we joined the National Defense Academy, हमको ये समझाया है that we should not be looking at being served. We have to look at serving others and not being served.
हुँ,
And motto in the NDA is service before self. And after that, when we graduated from NDA and went on to the Indian Military Academy at Dehradun, there they told us that country comes first. The people of India come next. You come last always and every time. And the values that we were taught in the IMA is that firstly, you are a gentleman cadet. And a gentleman means you have to be truthful, you need to be respectful to your elders, you need to respect women and children, you need to have be professionally competent, commitment, dedication, discipline. But the most value that we were taught is the most important word in our dictionary is the word love, mohabbat. And
जी,
that
जी।
mohabbat is love desh ke liye, love for the country, love for the people of India, love for the soldiers, love for the battalion, love for the regiment, love for the life we live. So it is love which is the beginning and end of the value system of the Indian Army. And it is on this altar of love that men and women in uniform do their best for their country and, if necessary, disappear in the smoke and fire of battle and make the ultimate sacrifice. So, love is the most important word in the value system of the Indian Army. And that love is also demonstrated by leadership. I don't know whether I'll talk about it later, but love is the beginning of good leadership. And because in war, the officer and the men that he leads, no one knows if they'll come back alive.
Hmm.
And therefore, leadership has to be of a very high order. And this leadership falls on very young shoulders, the shoulders of young officers, because they are the ones who are right in the front line of battle. And the young officer, uh, the all commanders in the army are called tigers. And this young tiger, he does not say, "Tum aage jao, मैं पीछे आ रहा हूँ." He says, "मेरे पीछे move." That is, follow me. And he's there right in front in the attack or in the defensive battle.
जी,
And the soldiers look at this young officer and follow him because he is setting a personal example facing the maximum danger. And the Indian soldier, the best soldiers in the world, if the young tiger dies, they take up the leadership baton from him and achieve the final objective. And because of this, the casualty ratio of Indian army officers is perhaps the highest in the world. In the 1971 war, in a war of just 13 days, my battalion, the 4th Battalion, the 5th Gurkha Rifles, entered the war with 18 officers. But in 13 days, we lost 4 officers killed and
Hmm.
7 officers wounded. Only 7 survived. So the value system is what makes us do what we do. And it is this value system by which we judge ourselves. And it tells us how to live and behave in peace, how to fight and die in war. So the value system of the Indian Army is just is it comes from old traditions. The ethos of the Indian Army is based on customs and traditions which go back to thousands of years. Whereas the Western countries of the world civilizations are not that old. Indian civilization goes back 5, 6, 7,000 years, of, and we have fought many battles before independence, after independence, and love of our neighbor, love and respect for others has made us a cohesive force and resulted in victory. In the Indian Army, we respect all religions. We have in our units what is called a dharamstal, and a dharamstal has the masjid, the mandir, the gurdwara, the girjagar all together. And sometimes the Maulvi conducts puja in the mandir
Hmm.
when the Panditji is not there. So it is this homogeneity, this cohesiveness, which makes all the difference between victory and defeat in war. In 1971, we had a Parsi chief, a Sikh army commander, the chief of staff, who was the genius who made the plans, was a Jew. We had Christian uh, commanders, division commanders. So we had an Anglo-Indian person in military operations directorate. So this is what the army is a representative represents the culture and homogeneity of India. And it is this homogeneity which is the strength of not only the army of the nation.
यस। यान सर, बहुत ही अच्छी बात है आपने बताया कि जब हम लोग बात करते हैं आर्मी की, तो कोर वैल्यूज़ में आपने बताया कि जहाँ पर प्यार है, मोहब्बत है, और सबसे पहला सर्विस लेना नहीं, सर्विस देने की बात आती है। और आपने कहा कि बैटल जब भी शुरू होगा तो लड़ाई के मैदान में पहले मैं, आप मुझे फॉलो करो, ये आप रूल फ़ॉलो करते हैं और सबके लिए प्यार करते हैं। और आर्मी में आपने बहुत अच्छी बात बताया कि वहाँ पर मंदिर भी है, मस्जिद भी है, चर्च भी है और गिरजाघर भी है। सभी जगह जो है सभी लोग ने सभी धर्मों को एक मानते हुए सभी अपने-अपने धर्म के अनुसार प्रार्थना वगैरह करते हैं। और कभी बाय चांस अगर कोई नहीं आया तो उसके बदले में दूसरे अ, फ़ादर भी मस्जिद में जाकर जो है वो अपनी प्रार्थना करा सकता है। तो ये सारी चीज़ें देखने को मिलती हैं आर्मी में। तो आपने और भी एक बात बताया कि यहाँ पर सबके लिए प्यार है और सबके लिए रिस्पेक्ट भी है, सम्मान है सबके लिए, चाहे वो छोटे-बड़े, माता-बहन जो भी हो, सबके लिए जो है आपने सम्मान की बात कही, जो आर्मी के अंदर कोर वैल्यूज़ में आता है। तो आइए आगे बढ़ते हैं और मेरा नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन ये है द डिफेंस एकेडमीज़ इसके बारे में बताइए। डिफेंस एकेडमी के बारे में।
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I just already covered what
कुछ
we are
चीज़ें।
taught in the academy, but
हुँ,
I would like to tell the listeners that the National Defense at Khadakwasla, the National Defense Academy at Khadakwasla,
हुँ,
is
हुँ,
the only academy in the world which trains officers of the Indian Army, of the Indian Navy, and the Indian Air Force. And this is where the comradeship begins because one of the most important principles of war is cooperation. And cooperation starts in the National Defense Academy because that is where it starts. And after that, when we go into our respective battalions, units, Army, Navy, Air Force, that bond always remains. And we have our course get togethers every year. And it is such a joy to come back and meet now with the families and the children. So, this cooperation as the principle of war is also taken to a higher plane because the so that the Indian Army, the Indian Navy, and the Indian Air Force have to work together to ensure victory in war. The What else can I say about the academies? Yeah, so if the academy at Karakwasla, basically there it is academics.
हुँ,
We have about 26 subjects. It includes social sciences, it includes science, it includes maths, it includes every topic under the sun. And of course, military subjects. And every possible sport in the world is taught at the academy. So the only problem there in the academy is there's not enough time to,
जी, जी।
excuse me.
नमस्कार, आप सुन रहे रेडियो मधुबन 90.4 एफएम पर बातें मुलाकातें इस कार्यक्रम को आप सुन रहे हैं। और अभी यान सर ने बहुत अच्छी बात बताया कि डिफेंस एकेडमी में विशेष रूप से उन्होंने काफ़ी अच्छी बातें बताया और उनके 26 अलग-अलग सब्जेक्ट्स होते हैं जो पढ़ाया जाता है और बहुत अच्छी तरह से उसे पढ़ाया जाता है। तो आइए फिर से मैं जोड़ना चाहूँगा। अ, यान सर एक और सवाल आता है कि आर्मी में ख़ास करके बात आती है लीडरशिप की। तो लीडरशिप इन द इंडियन आर्मी के बारे में आप क्या बताना चाहेंगे?
Yeah, so I've already said that leadership is most important because leadership in war is something is vital because the officers and the soldiers that he leads do not know whether they will come back alive. And
हुँ,
therefore, it is important that at the academies, leadership and value systems are the basis of all our training. Because you may be also maybe a highly proficient and competent soldier in your professional knowledge, but it is your character which will decide as to how you perform in battle. It is not only physical courage on the battlefield, it is also moral courage. I'll give you two examples of this leadership
यस सर।
and courage. Now, there was a again he was an Anglo-Indian officer. He was a captain and an instructor in the NDA.
Hmm.
And he taught us, he said, battles are won or lost in the mind before they are won or lost on the ground, which means that willpower, desire to win, professional competence, all this put together is okay, but you have to be physically courageous. And he proved it at the Battle of Dogarai when
Hmm.
he was commanding the Jat battalion of third Jat. And he used to speak Haryanvi.
Hmm.
And he had to cross the Issue Canal against a very strong position of defensive position of Pakistan. And they captured Dogarai.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, the link up could not take place and they were called back. They took this as an insult to the
Hmm.
honor of the battalion and their regiment. And when Dogra had to be captured for a second time, the men of the battalion told their commanding officer, Saab, we want to be in the forefront of the attacking forces. Because we had captured it once, this honor cannot be given to anybody else but us. And the CO spoke to his men, said that we will be going to capture Dogra tomorrow.
Hmm.
I want to be there with you. And if I die, I direct you to carry my
Hmm.
body with you to Dogra because I want to be there with you when Dogra is captured. And they
Hmm.
captured Dogra for a second time, but they had suffered very heavy casualties. But this is the spirit of a unit. This is the spirit of the Indian Army. This is physical courage at the highest level. And then the question is of moral courage. There was a battalion, my own battalion, the first battalion which I was commissioned and which I commanded. We had to capture a feature called Sejra
Hmm.
in Punjab. And plans had been made, but so many rehearsals had been carried out that the Pakistanis came to know that we were going to attack on a particular position. And they laid maximum mines. They dug a canal, a channel, a ditch, and they put all their machine guns and artillery on this approach. Now, the commanding officer said, came to the conclusion that if he attacked on this approach, he and all his men would die and the objective would not be captured. And he wanted the plan to be changed a couple of days before the war. So there was a big hangama. All the supporting arm commanders said, there is no time to make a new plan. What is he talking? How can he
Hmm.
do it now? But the seer stuck to his guns and he attacked across the river on the other side and he convinced his superiors and said, reinforcing a bad plan will only result in defeat. If you insist that I follow this old plan, then all you have is my body and the bodies of my men. If you allow me to attack on my own plan, on a different plan, I can assure you I will capture the objective and you can have breakfast with me at 11 o'clock on the day the objective is captured. And that is what happened. This
Wow.
young lieutenant colonel stood up against his superiors and insisted that he be allowed to follow his own plan rather than a plan which was doomed to failure. So,
Hmm.
in life, we also need to understand that we have to take the right and do what is right, irrespective of the consequences. So, leadership, doing what is right, physical courage is not enough, moral courage is also required. So this is what I can say about leadership in the Indian Army, in addition to what I had said earlier.
Yeah. ईयान सर बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद, शुक्रिया, बहुत अच्छी बात आपने बताया। कुछ बातें जो हैं मेरे ज़हन में उतर गए कि आपने एक बहुत अच्छी बात कहा कि युद्ध जीतना मैदान में नहीं होता है, मन से जीतना होता है। अगर आप मन से बहुत ही अच्छी तरह से स्ट्रॉन्ग है, तो आपने आधी बाजी मार ली है और मैदान में तो सिर्फ़ आपको एक्शन करना है। अगर मन से आप बिल्कुल पूरी तरह से सजग और जागरूक हैं, तो आपका आधा काम हो जाता है और उसके कई एग्ज़ाम्पल्स भी आपने दिए। एक और सवाल आता है, द रोल ऑफ द फैमिली इन द आर्मेड फोर्स, इसके बारे में बताइए?
Yeah, this, this is very, very important because the personnel of the armed forces do what they do because of the strong support they get from their families,
हुँ,
from the wives, from the mothers. And unfortunately, I do feel that enough recognition is not given to the wives and mothers of the army. When a war is fought, immediately after the war, there is much recognition to the soldiers and much is made of them. But after a while, people forget. And the
हुँ,
most important people who they forget are the army widows who have given all their all for the country. I
हुँ।
would, if I have your permission, I would like to read a small poem of a few lines
Yeah.
about the army
You please
officers,
reference. Yes, yes.
wives, and mothers. And the title of the poem is Waiting.
Hmm.
This is a story about an army wife who is waiting for her husband to come back from the war.
Yeah.
I'll read the poem.
Yes, sir.
She sits beside her window, looking up the village track, praying hard to God Almighty that her men will soon be back. Husbands, sons, and brothers have answered India's call. They went to fight our battles. Her family offered all. Her men fought fierce battles. The rivers ran red. The ground is soaked and sodden with the blood of all her dead. She then received a message that her men return no more. Her men are past recalling. They have crossed the distant shore. But she hopes there's been an error and her men will come back home so she can stop her endless waiting and not be left alone. So she sits beside a window, looking up the village track for her husband, sons, and brothers, but they won't be coming back. So, this is the tragedy and triumph of the women of the Indian Army, who are the backbone of the armed forces. And I do hope this poem, which I have, and I've written another poem, I've written 10 poems about war, that these poems will infuse in the hearts of the citizens of India a respect for the armed forces and the way that we live. So, this is all about family support, officers' wives, mothers, children. And there's another one where a Jawan was killed in Sri Lanka. We have up to 5 generations of soldiers in the battalion. And he was killed in Sri Lanka. And we have a tradition that when a man dies in battle,
Hmm.
we all give 1 day's salary. Money is collected and sent with a junior commissioned officer or a non-commissioned officer or a Jawan to the wife or the mother to tend over the period till the pension starts. So this JCO took that money and went to this family in Nepal, which is on the Nepal-Tibet border.
Hmm.
And when he reached there, he saw, to his astonishment, that she was already in mourning.
Hmm.
So he sat down quietly beside her and she told him, "How did the CO Saab come to know that my husband has died?" Uh, Her husband was a second generation soldier of the battalion. So she said, "How did the commanding officer come to know? You all are so far away in Sri Lanka." So he now realized that not only had she lost her husband, but she had also lost her son. And then he tells her, "Mataji, I am sorry, but you have also lost your son." So tears came down her cheek and she said, "How did he die? Did he die a good soldier's death?" And he told her, "Yes, he was a hero."
Hmm.
And then the second son, who was collecting wood from the jungle, came and saw, and he came running to see the Jesus. He said, "What news have you brought from the battalion?" And she told him, "Go inside and make a cup of tea for Subhadar Saab." And when he came, she said, "Sit down.
Hmm.
Subhadar Saab has brought sad news. Your brother is no more. He has died in battle in Sri Lanka." And then she tells the JSU, "It is not right that the link between my family and the battalion should break. This boy is there. Take him with you to the battalion."
Wow.
And he tells her, "Mataji, but how will you survive?" She says, "Don't worry about me. The battalion is more important." And so that boy joined the battalion. And today he has a son. And we are waiting for him to join the battalion. He will be the fourth generation in the
Wow.
battalion. So this is what
यन
so
सर
this is
बहुत
what
बढ़िया जी।
family is all about.
बहुत ही अच्छी बात आपने बताया कि कैसे परिवार वाले जो है अपने देश के लिए कुर्बान होते हैं और बहुत अच्छी कहानी आपने बताया और बहुत ही अच्छा पोयम भी आपने सुनाया जहाँ पर एक महिला जो है खिड़की के पास बैठकर राह निहारती है ये आपने का पोयम सुनाया और उसके बाद आपने श्रीलंका वाली कहानी बताया जहाँ पर बहुत ही सुंदर कहानी आपने उसको नरेट किया थैंक यू सो मच चलिए दोस्तों हम लोग अगर कहानी को सुने तो जैसे हम लोग को लगता है कि बहुत बड़ी चीज़ हो गई लेकिन जो फैमिली है जो आर्मी के साथ जुड़ी हुई फैमिली है वो लोग देश के प्रति कितना अपना प्यार और सब कुछ मना सर्वस्व त्यागी बनकर अपने जीवन को जीते हैं और बैक साइड से वो पूरी तरह से बटालियन को यानी देश के प्रति पूरी तरह से सहयोगी बने रहते हैं चाहे उसमें अपना पति कुर्बान हो जाए बेटा कुर्बान हो जाए और इस कहानी में इस औरत ने खास करके अपना बेटा जानने के बोला दूसरा बेटा रेडी है अब इसको ले जाइए तो कितनी बड़ी बात है तो हेड्सअप उनके लिए उस माता के लिए और आइए आगे बढ़ते हैं फिर से मैं जोड़ना चाहूँगा आपको सर से अब बात करते हैं जब लड़ाई की बात चली रही है तो वेपन्स एंड इक्विपमेंट्स जो यूज़ किया जाता है उसके बारे में थोड़ी सी बातें बताएंगे
Yeah, the reason this is a good point, Ramesh ji,
जी
because the army can fight only if it is properly trained and
हम्म
properly armed. In all the wars that we have fought, we have always been surprised because our intelligence system is not that good, and this needs to be sorted out. And the other is that the weapons and equipment that we need to fight a superior foe like China is very important. We can fight only as well as we are armed. In the 1962 war, the American war correspondent said that the Indian army lacks everything courage. That means all that they fought was with courage. They had substandard weapons. In the war in Kargil, we were fighting a Pakistani army, and the chief, General Ved Malik, said, "We will fight." When he was asked this question, the same question about weapons and equipment, he said, "We will fight with what we have." In the 1965 war, the Americans had armed Pakistan with over $1.7 billion worth of equipment, 200 pattern tanks, squadrons of starfighters, signals equipment. But the Indian Army, despite the fact that we were not so well armed, we destroyed nearly three quarters of all those pattern tanks because of our superior courage, will to fight. But that does not mean that we should allow the army to fight with substandard equipment. It is important that the citizens of India know more about how the army lives and how the army fights. And because you also have a stake in the security of the country, and that stake for security depends upon how well we fight. And how well we fight is not only because of the courage that we have, but also the equipment. So it is important that the citizens of India support the need, the armed forces, for the need to be better armed.
जी, जी। अ, ईयान सर बहुत ही अच्छी बात आपने बताया। आर्मी अगर है तो इंस्ट्रूमेंट, इक्विपमेंट जो भी चीज़ें हथियार लगते हैं वो पूरी तरह से संपन्न होना चाहिए, उसके बिना हम लोग बहुत ज़्यादा काम नहीं कर सकते हैं। और मैं चाहूँगा कि अर्चना जी जो है एक सरप्राइज़ आपको दिखाना चाहेंगे। यस अर्चना जी कुछ सरप्राइज़ आप बताइए?
Yes. Welcome to the show, Ian Uncle, and Jai Hind to everyone. There is a little artist, Vedant Malik, 9 year old. He has made a painting for you in the spirit of patriotism. So it's being displayed on the screen.
Oh, how nice! How nice! They, it's a very not only has it got the national flag, but the background also has got the colors of the national flag. And
And India emerging.
India emerging because of that Ashok Chakra, the chakra over there is evolving, meaning it is emerging. It is a very not only thoughtful but a very imaginative painting. Thank you, Vedant.
Most welcome. Um,
चलिए वेदांत
so,
बहुत-बहुत या अर्चना जी बोलिए।
yes. Um, so we would like to know about the training for war and also the brave deed that happened at your end during the 1971 Indo-Pakistan War, um, which is something which we all would like to hear about.
Well, again, this is a story about the 4th Battalion, the 5th Gurkha Rifles. We had fought this war, as you know, lasted for only 13 days. And in this short period, the battalion had fought three very ferocious battles. In the first battle, the Battle of Atgram, the CO decided that he would launch a night attack, a surprise attack. And for that, he did not use artillery fire or machine gun fire. He went silently at night and used the kukri. The kukri is a Gurkha knife, which is a blade about 14 inches, very sharp weapon, and the Gurkhas can just weave magic with that weapon. And we destroyed with the kukri the battalion, a company of the Punjab Regiment of the Pakistan Army. And those who were killed, of course, their bodies remained there. But those who escaped told their colleagues, don't mess with the Gurkhas because you're likely to lose your head. So this use, sorry, this use of the kukri uh, generated fear in the minds of the Pakistani soldier. And then we had to fight another battle at a place called Ghazipur. And the Ghazipur battle had to be fought because Another battalion had failed to capture it, and the corps commander said, "Send in the Gurkhas." But after both these battles, although I had mentioned earlier that although we had started the war, entered the war with 18 officers, by now we had lost 3 killed and 4 wounded. So we had only 11 officers left, and the war had just started. And then the corps commander, a very proficient, the best tactical field commander the Indian Army has produced, General Sagat Singh. He had great faith in the battalion. Because the battalion had lost so many officers and men, the CO, a very brave and courageous officer, Lieutenant Colonel Arun Bhimrao Harolikar, had requested for 4 days to reorganize the battalion so it would be competent for the next task. But the corps commander said, I have got information that the brigade, now what is the brigade and what is the battalion? The battalion has about 1,000 men at full strength. It is never at full strength. But a battalion is about 1,000 men. So a brigade has got 3 battalions, so it has about 3,000 men. So he said the brigade which is holding Sylhet has moved for the defense of Dhaka. I want Sylhet to be captured immediately in a heliborne operation, and the Gurkhas are best suited for this. So the brigade commander told him, Sir, I've given them 4 days to reorganize themselves. He said, No, I cannot wait for 4 days. Send them immediately. So this heliborne operation was the fastest heliborne operation launched in military history worldwide, because when a heliborne operation or a paradrop operation takes place, it requires cooperation between the Army and the Air Force, which takes about 3 or 4 days, and training has to be done, operational planning has to be done, administration has to be done. But Sagar Singh said no. 7 o'clock, he gave the orders for the operation to come to the battalion. At 9:30, a chopper came to take the CO for a recce. At 2:30, we were launched. So this is what happened. And we were told that there's no one in Sylhet. So what are you bothered about? But uh, the brigade had not left Sylhet. It was still there. Not only that, 202 Pakistan Brigade, which was the fulcrum, the center point of General Niazi's defense, it was still in Sylhet. Not only that, it was reinforced by 313 Pakistan Brigade. So now 3,000 plus 3,000 is 6,000. Plus there was a Sylhet garrison of about 2,000. Luckily, we did not know. We fought them for 9 days and 9 nights. Although we were promised to be reinforced in 48 hours, reinforcement never took place. We had limited food, no water, limited ammunition. But what Desmond Hayes said, battles are won or lost in the mind before they are won or lost on the ground. And 4-5 Gurkhas proved it once again at the Battle of Sylhet. And when, on the 15th of December, the Pakistanis came to surrender, they were surprised and astonished to find that we were only a battalion, and that too an understrength battalion. Our strength was 384 when we were inducted and 352 when the surrender took place. We got the shock of our lives when 3 brigadiers, 2 full colonels, 173 officers, and 8,000, 290 JCOs, and 8,000 men surrendered to our battalion. So this is what mental courage, mental resilience, physical courage, all put together, and determination to succeed, never to be afraid, and to never give up. So this is what the Indian Army is all about. Do what you love what you do, never be afraid, and never give up.
Thank you. Uncle, could you, Ian sir, if you could tell us a little about the incident, that happened where you had stepped onto the landmine and then the journey after that?
Well, Archana, I think too much is being made about this. Uh, there are many officers, JCOs, and Jawans who have lost their limbs in war, particularly on minefields. I was just one of them. And the only difference is that during the war, our medical facilities were destroyed by Pakistani guns. So when I stepped on a mine, there was no uh, morphia, there was no medicines, there was nothing to cut my leg off. And because everything had been destroyed. So the only weapon, the only instrument available was a kukri. And so my leg was dangling, my foot was dangling, just a piece of flesh. So I did not hack it off or chop it off or amputate it. I just had to sever that portion of the leg. And that was the only option available. And anyone in my position would have done the same thing. So I feel a little embarrassed when people make a big issue of this because anybody in my position would have done the same thing. And the what makes the story interesting is that uh, I asked the commanding officer to get me evacuated to an Indian hospital because war had finished. But there was no chopper available after the surrender because it was busy on other tasks. And so the enemy commander offered medical facilities, Pakistani medical facilities to for me. And I was not very keen because I did not trust the Pakistanis, having seen and heard of the atrocities that they had committed. But the CEO said, you don't have an option. And I said, okay. And but I'm not happy to take Pakistani blood. And he said, okay, what else? I said, sir, wherever they operate on me, I want you to be present because I don't want them to cut off my good leg. So deep was my suspicion. But later on, I came to realize from the medical documents, which I didn't almost remember what happened. I only remember being taken to the hospital, put on a bed. After that, my mind is blank. But my leg was amputated by a Pakistani Major Muhammad Bashir, and he did a good job. And perhaps we can also say that doctors all over the world are the same, and we also have treated Pakistani prisoners and looked after their medical facilities. So this is what happened on that day.
Okay. Right. Thank you so much, and hats off to you and your patriotic fervor and love for the country, uh, which did not stop you from doing anything possible, to fight for the country. And still, at this age and after everything, you are still working in the same defense field and helping the disabled and war wounded foundation. It's a pride for us to have a person like you in our country. Thank
Yes,
you so much,
Archana,
sir.
also to answer your question, I didn't answer it fully. Uh, I was for a year, nearly 9 months in a operation center at Pune, and I was told that you can't go back to the battalion because the rules don't permit uh, people in low medical category, battle casualties who have lost a limb, to go back to the troops because you cannot do what is required of you. But to cut a long story short, I proved to the army that I was as good as anybody else physically. I took part in tests. I did well. I climbed hills and proved to the army that I was as good as anybody else. And we had chiefs at that time, General Raina and General Krishna Rao, who, on my case, now I was the first casualty to be approved for commander for battalion. I commanded the battalion. I then was approved for commander for brigade, And then, so I'm the person who's opened up promotion for battle casualties in the Indian Army. And three battle casualties reached Lieutenant General rank, which is one rank below the chief. And one of them had lost both legs. So this is what I'm proud of, that I was the main person who opened up promotion for battle casualties of the Indian Army. Yes, I'm proud of that.
I also hear that you have, shared your life experiences, and whatever journey you have had as in the armed forces in the form of books, which people can have an insight into what happens to be a soldier, what happens on the armed front and the war front. And would you like to say something about it?
Yes, Archana, my latest book, the title of which is 1952 Stories of Grit and Glory, published by Penguin, the 22nd of June 2021. Within 6 weeks, it has gone into a second reprint, and this epitomizes these stories epitomizes the value and culture of the Indian Armed Forces, Army, Navy, Air Force, and it's available on Amazon. And if you approach Amazon, the book will be with you within 48 hours. So it will be a good learning for people to understand what the Indian Army, Navy, Air Force is all about and how it fought in the 71 war and what engineered our victory.
यस। यान सर बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद, शुक्रिया अपने बारे में बताने के लिए। आपने किताबें लिखी हैं वो अमेज़न पर उपलब्ध हैं और उसको पढ़ने के बाद इंडियन आर्मी क्या है और वहाँ का सिस्टम क्या है वो बहुत ही अच्छी तरह से उसमें स्पष्ट हो जाता है। और आपने एक बहुत ही यूनिक काम किया है अपने जैसे कि ट्रेनिंग की वॉर में अगर बैटल पे अगर आप हैं, तो आपका फ़र्ज़ क्या बनता है, आप कैसे उसको ठीक कर लेते हैं, समय पर आप उन चीज़ों को एक डेयरिंग है वो दिखाते हैं, तो वो आपने दिखाया अपने टाइम पर और अपने पैर को काट कर आपने जो है वो सारी चीज़ें जो है एक बड़ा रोंगटे खड़ा होता है कि ऐसे कैसे हो सकता है, लेकिन आपने वो जज़्बा अपने अंदर दिखाया, जिसकी वजह से आपकी कहानी जो है बहुत पॉपुलर है। आप अननोन नहीं, आज वेल नोन सोल्जर हैं। सलाम आपको। मैं ये जानना मैं आपको शेखर सर आ गए हैं, एक बहुत ही खूबसूरत गीत आपके लिए डेडिकेट करना चाहते हैं, तो यस शेखर सर वेलकम।
अंकल यन स्वागत आपका। बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है आपको देख के।
Thank you, Shikhar. Nice seeing you.
नाइस
on
सीइंग
the
यू टू।
program.
तो अंकल यन रमेश जी और अर्चना जी एक गीत की बात कर रहे थे और उसका ये है कि मैंने सोचा एक लक्ष्य फिल्म का गाना गाया जाए और इसका
बिल्कुल, बिल्कुल।
कारण ये था कि दो चीजें मेरे दिमाग में आती हैं। पहला कि अंकल यन सिर्फ बहुत बड़े जनरल नहीं है आर्मी के, लेकिन अंकल यन से ये सीखने को मिलता है कि लक्ष्य को पाना एक चीज है, लेकिन हमेशा कोई ना कोई लक्ष्य होना ये भी बहुत बड़ी चीज है। और अंकल यन तो बहुत जवान हैं अभी, लेकिन इतने साल हो गए हमेशा इनका कोई ना कोई बहुत ही सुंदर लक्ष्य रहता है कि मुझे ये करना है अगले 6 महीने में, 1 साल में, 2 साल में, 5 साल में। और दूसरी बात ये शायद बाकी सबको मालूम ना हो, लेकिन अंकल यन के सबसे बड़े जो बेटे हैं वो भी आर्मी में हैं और लक्ष्य जो मूवी है वो तो कारगिल वॉर के बारे में है, आपको पता है। और इनके बेटे सुनीत का भी उनकी भी सेवा रही है कारगिल वॉर में अपनी सेना के लिए। तो ये अंकल इयन के लिए और सुनीत के लिए और हमारी सारी सेना के लिए हमारा एक छोटा सा प्रणाम और सलाम। हाँ यही रास्ता है तेरा, तूने अब जाना है। हाँ यही सपना है तेरा, तूने पहचाना है। तुझे अब ये दिखाना है, रोके तुझको आंधियां, या जमीन और आसमां पाएगा जो लक्ष्य है तेरा, लक्ष्य को हर हाल में पाना है। मुश्किल कोई आ जाए तो, पर्वत कोई टकराए तो, ताकत कोई दिखलाए तो, तूफान कोई मंडराए तो, मुश्किल कोई आ जाए तो, पर्वत कोई टकराए तो, बरसे चाहे अंबर से आग, लिपटे चाहे पैरों से नाक, बरसे चाहे अंबर से आग, लिपटे चाहे पैरों से नाक, पाएगा लक्ष्य है तेरा, लक्ष्य को हर हाल मानना है। हिम्मत से जो कोई चले, धरती हिले कदमों तले, क्या दूरियां क्या फासले, मंजिल लगे या कोई गले, हिम्मत से जो कोई चले, धरती हिले कदमों तले, तू चल यूं ही अब सुबह शाम, झुकना रुकना नहीं तेरा काम, तू चल यूं ही अब सुबह शाम, रुकना झुकना नहीं तेरा काम, पाएगा जो लक्ष्य है तेरा, लक्ष्य को हर हाल में पाना है। हाँ यही रास्ता है तेरा, तूने अब जाना है, हाँ यही सपना है तेरा, तूने पहचाना है, तुझे अब ये दिखाना है ना। Thank you, Uncle Ian, and thank you to our amazing Indian Army.
Thank you, Professor. Thanks both you and Rohan for your wonderful tribute to the Indian Army. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Uncle.
और मुझे लगता है कि हमारे सभी दर्शक मित्र सुनकर खुश हो रहे हैं और आपके लिए बहुत सारे लोगों ने मैसेज किया है। हैंड्स ऑफ सर आपके लिए, स्टैंडिंग हैंड्स ऑफ करके भेजा है प्यार से मैसेजेस। बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं आपको, मंगल कामनाएं। आपसे मिलकर हमें बहुत एनर्जी मिली है और देश के प्रति और प्यार बढ़ा है, और अच्छा करे और अच्छा करे, ऐसी अंदर से जो है एक जिज्ञासा उत्पन्न हो रही। थैंक यू सो मच। फिर से एक बार ढेर सारी खुशियाँ, ढेर सारी मंगल कामनाएं, और फिर मिलेंगे ऐसी आशा के साथ। सलाम, नमस्ते, हमारा गणिसा। जय हिंद, जय भारत, ओम शांति।
Thank you, Ramesh ji. Thank you, Archana. Thank